Hey guys, in this video, I want to tell you the 2 things you want from a design critique and then do a design critique. So let's get into it. Okay, so the 2 things you want from a design critique are the truth and principles. So this is what I mean. First, you want the truth. That is, you want the critique to be true. You want the information that the one who's giving you the criticism to be actually true. Now, one of the main things that you do when you're learning design is you're learning to distinguish between things that are objective, true, and things that are subjective, that is different according to each person. And when you're giving a critique, you want to clearly be able to communicate the difference. When is it I'm giving feedback that this is objectively true, this is absolutely false, the contrast, the hierarchy is off here, and when is it subjectively true? Either they're not sure or they're just saying, hey, this is just a taste, I would do this way, but I think what you got is fine. Very important. The second thing is principles. And here's what I mean. The idea of a critique isn't just that you would get the design right. It's also that you would become a better designer. And you largely do that by understanding principles of design, or more specifically, applied principles. So you don't want to hear just, hey, this header is wrong, or this component here is wrong. You want to say, this is wrong, and why? What is the reason? They provide an assertion, this is wrong, and they provide an argument. The contrast is wrong, the hierarchy is wrong, and you want the people actually looking at this first, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is sort of one of the differences between a design critique and just general feedback, or if you have user testing. The users are just gonna tell you what they feel, and typically they're not gonna be design trained, and so these are gonna be a sort of mix of things. Some you need to change, some you don't, and the idea is that they haven't gone through the education of being able to sharpen what is actually true and not true. And part of the process after you receive that feedback is to interpret it. So someone says, I don't like that section over there. You have to work out, why do they not like it? Is there something wrong with the hierarchy? Is there something wrong with the balance? What is it? Because often it'll be more emotive words that they're gonna be using. Okay, so let's do this. Let's jump into a design critique. And what I want to critique is this design here. This popped up on my Twitter from this great designer named Max, and I want to critique this for 2 reasons. First, it's a great design. I would say it's 95% of the way there out of 100. Now, you might be wondering, wait, don't you want to kind of critique worse designs? No, because if a design is, say, under 75% of the way there, everyone knows what's wrong with it. It's pretty obvious. But once you get beyond, say, 80%, then the critiques get really interesting, because to be able to critique it, you really have to have a deep understanding of design principles. And that's what makes it particularly interesting, because you look at designs like these and your immediate feeling is, this looks awesome, it's ready to ship. And let me say here, it is ready to ship. And I think it's a 95. It's better than most web app designs on the internet. You could ship this as is. It's beautiful. If I were using it, I literally wouldn't even think about the design. But that's where it gets interesting. And second, he asked for it. So I'm not just pulling this out of anyone. He asked for honest feedback. So that's what I'm giving. So let's get into it. Let's start simple here on the top left with the logo. Let's just align this with our left edge right here. Nothing profound here. Boop, just let's move it over. And the sort of principle right here is that things need to either be completely aligned or completely different. If they're almost there, it's gonna feel like a mistake. Okay, awesome. Next, we're gonna deal with this plus sign right here. Well, what's wrong with it? Well, this is part of a problem that comes up multiple times in this design here, with this search bar here, and then with this last update here. And this has to do with a principle that I call lostness, or being an orphan, like in typography, but here with UI design. And the principle is this: designs are not just a bunch of atoms sort of equally spaced out, but they're grouped. And so even on this page, you say at the highest level, you have like 2 sections. This kind of section right here, maybe you want to include this header, you can include it as a third thing, and then this section right here. And then you go into there and you're like, oh, we have 2 more. We've got 1 here and then 1 here. And then you can go in again. And then we've got 4 things right here. So you have hierarchies of groups of things. So this means when you add something into it, you want to add it to a grouping. You want to clearly communicate which part, which group, which section of the design does this fall into. And if it's not immediately clear, it suffers from lostness. The analogy I like to use is, let's say you're looking at a map and you've got a buddy who's like getting a house. And so you're looking at a map and you say, okay, where's your house going to be? And you see a bunch of different cities and towns, and between them, he just points there, kind of like next to the highway or something. And you would immediately have the feeling that like something's wrong, and something would be wrong. And you would feel like something is wrong because normally houses are in towns or in cities because that's where the stores are, where the schools are, where the communities are. There's already established places, and when you don't put something there, the immediately feeling is something is wrong, that thing is lost or confused. So this is just getting very far away from our articles over here. So let's just push this in a little bit here. Beautiful. All right, next, let's deal with this orphan right here. Now, when you're thinking about this principle, sometimes it's called common region or proximity or grouping. These exist in hierarchies and layers. So this is the big section here, and that section has 2 sections, this one and this one. And often the orphan will come in at one level at that. So normally something won't just be dropped in sort of like anywhere at random, but it's within a certain layer, it gets confused. And that's true here. So we've got this header section here. And within this header section, we got 2 types of things. We've got a header, we've got header copy, and then we've got this filter over here. And this search bar right here is not visually connected to either of those with regard to its proximity. But we actually know where it should be. We shouldn't butt it up against here because it's a different type of thing. This is giving us a type description of what this section is. And over here, you have an interactive thing, a widget that will be affecting this list over here. Also, this is designed similarly with the same background and border radius, etc. So it's clear also the type of thing is the same. You're going to interact with this thing. Both of these things are interactive, and both of them will affect this list. So what we really should do is just bump it up over here. Okay, that's better, but it's not the best we can do. And that's because we've got a layer problem. That is, 2 things are in the same group that are not of the same type. The information hierarchy is wrong. That is to say, this section here contains both the header and these interactive contents. Now, do these interactive items here, are they more related to this or the header? Well, obviously this, because when you interact with these, it will affect this thing in another layer, in another group. So really, we should move these out of the header because the header should just be its own thing and move it into the section with the closest content parity. So let's just move it down. Beautiful. So we're using their proximity to communicate their relationship. Awesome. But let's finesse this a little because we can do a cool, subtle thing. So right now, we've got this column that exists with these interactive buttons. And the kind of cool thing that we can do is we can resize this like this so that we create this interactive common region over here. So we know that that in this side over here, we're going to interact with this content. We can schedule it, we can edit it, we can filter it. And so that makes a really nice, clean design. Okay, what's next? Well, there's one more thing with this header here. Now, in this next critique, this I don't think is exactly objective here. And that is to say, we've got this header up here in its own section, and that's great, but this is very high on the hierarchy. And that is to say, when the user comes onto this page, what is the first and second and third thing they look at? This is very high right now. We've got big, bold type, and it's been put in this bar right here. It's stretched across all of here. We got all this white space, which is sort of drawing our attention over to this left black contrasty side. And a couple of the comments on Twitter even said a point about the size of the font. Now, when you're talking about the size of something, there are really two aspects to this. That is, one is your proportion of attention, and two, the relationship between that thing and other things in the design. So the first is proportion, and that's just sort of obvious. Like, you have a visual field, you've got a page, and how much of that page, how many of those pixels are filled up with what kind of thing? And so the more pixels it fills up, the more it commands your attention, the higher that is in the hierarchy. And so when someone says something that they don't like the size, they don't like it because it's too big, what they're saying is that it's commanding a lot of attention. And whenever you get that critique, you always have to ask whether that design decision maps to the content hierarchy, the information hierarchy, because you want the visual hierarchy to map one-to-one to the information hierarchy. That is, in terms of the actual content of the page, what's the most important thing? Like if you were to just draw it in an outline, like in a text document, what's the most important thing? And the truth is that you're on the drafts page is not super high. It is high, but it's not super high. It's not something you want to force the user to really focus on. So we can fix that. We can take away this background and just pop it into this own section. And what this does is it moves it down in the hierarchy because you're not giving it its own section and saying, look at this section on the top. Okay, what's next? Next is a thing that's taking up the first level of hierarchy that's probably shouldn't be. And that is all of this purple here, and you probably could draw it into a J like this. So once again, when the user comes into the page, they have their eyes closed, they open them up, what do they see? They see a bunch of purple edit buttons. Now, does that visual decision map to the content, the information hierarchy? Well, let's think big picture. You're coming here, what do you want to find? You want to look for an article to edit. That's what you're doing on this page. That's the main function of this page. Let me find an article. So what you really want is you probably want the type at the first level of importance. And then depending on how important the pictures are, maybe that's first, maybe that's second, probably second, because in most blogs, the picture is kind of not that important. It's really the type that's important. So we don't want thousands of users coming here and immediately looking at an edit button. So let's just bump it down. And we've already got a style here. So let's just make that the same. Okay, beautiful. And you can retain that design through a hover state of hovering here and bringing that purple background. Okay, so we've solved this hierarchy problem. It's already drawing our attention more to this bold type here, which is great. But we have this little L down here, which is got because we got this big purple contrast right here. And we're gonna do a very simple thing. Let's just get rid of visual information, right? Often in the design, you don't need to add things, you mean to subtract things. And this is getting us attention. So we're gonna get rid of the color, we're gonna get rid of these circles and just go boop, and there it goes down. Because once again, if you just ask in the abstract, do you want people focused on pagination? Well, no. We have a visual pattern, we always know that it's gonna be at the bottom. All we need is to show the page numbers and a visual indication of what page you're on, but we want that to sit back. All right, beautiful. Next, let's just get rid of this here. We don't know what it is, so we can't judge what we should do with it, but just for the sake of this practice, let's just bump it back. And now we're almost done. We've got one more orphan to take care of, and it's this down here, right here. So same with the problem up here where we had this element in here that was in between two elements. We've got the same problem, but vertically now. So this is just smashed sort of in between here, this item here, and the sort of bottom of this kind of card right here. And once again, when you look at this, you have this sense of unsureness of like, what is that thing doing there? Why is it there? It seems lost, and it absolutely is, because it's not part of any group. It's not part of this group. It's not part of this group. It's not part of this group, like overlaying the text or something like that. It's not part of anything. And once again, once you've already got a hierarchy, once you've already got cities and towns, you want to dump it into one of the groups. And we've got an indication of where in the information hierarchy it goes, because we've got type size, that's one thing, same as up here, and we got type color, same as up here. So this is already communicating to us that these things are similar. They're part of the same group. So let's just put them together. And just like that, we clean it up. It also gives us some nice white space so that we're separating this from the next thing. And we're not just making a big stream of visual information, is that we're creating some division right here. So we've got some nice space. Nice. And that's it. That's the critique. And once again, this may feel like a lot, but this was a 95. This is better than most designs on the internet. But you can always take it those last 5%. So let's look at a comparison. This was before and this was after. Now, you may be thinking when you see the contrast between these two is you'd be like, well, I kind of like this purple and stuff like that. But one very important principle, if you're a designer, to understand is that people don't look at your designs, they use your designs. They don't look at them, they use them. So for instance, if you're on vacation and you're driving down the street and you want some coffee, you're just looking for that green Starbucks lady, right? You're not thinking about why is it a mermaid? What does it symbolize? It doesn't seem to have anything to do with coffee. No. You want to use that logo to get you to the coffee. And so, especially on UIs, on apps, people are using it. So you want to design for people using it, not for people looking at it. All right, guys, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.